Hey everybody, I'm John from Scooter.com, and today we are going to talk about simplifying radicals. So what does simplifying radicals mean? First of all, let's learn what a radical is. So a radical is basically anything where we see, let me get this here, anything where we see a square root sign. So if I have the square root of 72, for example, this is called a radical. The part inside the square root sign is actually called a radicand. And simplifying radicals basically means getting the number inside the square root sign as small as possible. Now, this lesson is going to be both simple and radical. Anyway, so let's move on to an example here. Here we have the same problem as before, 72, the square root of 72. The way to do this is to actually factor 72 into smaller numbers and try to simplify it that way. Now, what I'm going to do is rewrite this as the square root of 9 times 8. Okay, so 9 times 8 is 72. Now, a cool property of radicals is that we can actually rewrite this as the square root of 9 times the square root of 8. All right, so this is a simple property of radicals. It means that the square root of a product is actually the product of the square roots. Okay, so from here we can actually rewrite this. Since we know the square root of 9 is actually 3, let's rewrite this as 3 times the square root of 8. Okay, so this is actually partially simplified. You'll see that we have an 8 inside the square root, and that's definitely smaller than 72. But we can actually go a bit further and rewrite this as 3 times the square root of 4 times 2, right? Okay. And I'm going to rewrite this as 3 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 2. And we can actually simplify this a bit further since the square root of 4 is just 2, right? So 3 times 2 times the square root of 2, and let me just rewrite this as 6 times the square root of 2. Okay, so I can't really take the square root of 2. Well, I can, but it's not a simple number. So this is about as small as we can get the number inside the radical. So we went from the square root of 72 to 6 times the square root of 2, and that is as simple as you can get it. So that is the basic gist of simplifying radicals. Really simple, right? Let's move on to a more difficult example. Kind of more difficult. We'll learn a little bit more about radicals. Here we have the square root of negative 45. Now, this can actually be factored a bit. I'm going to rewrite this kind of funky. I'm going to do negative 1 times 9, right, times 5. Okay. Now we learned from the previous example that the square root of a product is actually the product of square roots. So let me rewrite this as the product of square roots, right? Okay. So we already know what the square root of 9 is. That's just 3, right? We know that we can't really take the square root of 5 and get a simple number, so we're just going to leave this as it is. But what is the square root of negative 1? Well, this is actually called an imaginary number. Sometimes it's also called a complex number. But an imaginary number basically means the square root of negative 1. We can rewrite the square root of negative 1 by the letter I. Okay, so whenever you see the letter I, that just basically means the square root of negative 1. Okay, so we have the letter I here. We have 3, which is the square root of 9, and we have the square root of 5. So I have simplified this radical, square root of negative 45, as 3i times the square root of 5. So basically that is it for simplifying radicals. The point is that we want to get the number inside the square root sign as small as possible, which we did, and we factor out numbers that can come outside of the radical, which we did. So that is it. That's what simplifying radicals is all about. Again, I'm John from Scooter.com. If you have any questions about this video or other videos on our YouTube channel, you can email me at john@scooter.com. And that is it for right now. Until next time, thank you very much.